Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Muhammad David Cahya Hafiz. My NIN is 253500021. My study program is English Literature. This time, I will discuss the history of language from the mysterious pre-Roman era to the golden age of Roman, a linguistic exploration since tracing the roots of language in modern Europe, and how one language, Latin, was able to dominate the first and ultimately give rise to other languages. Before Rome became a giant, Europe was a mosaic of language. The dominant major families were Indo-European, or PIE, Proto-Indo-European, which we reconstruct as the ancestor of almost all European languages, including Latin, Greek, and Germanic. The Italian peninsula itself boasts a diverse range of languages. In the south and center, there are other Italic languages, such as Oscan and Umbrian. In the north, there's in Tuscan a mysterious non-Indo-European language and Celtic in the Po Valley. However, amidst this diversity, a small dialect in this region of Latium slowly began to emerge. Latin. Initially it was the language of farmers and shepherds in the small city of Rome. Latin belongs to the Italian branch, and we see early evidence of it in ancient inscriptions like those at the Cista Vicoroni. Old Latin around the 7th century BC. This Old Latin was very different from the Latin we know from Julius Caesar. It was a rough and simple language. With the expansion of the Roman Republic and then the Empire, Latin spread throughout the Western Mediterranean. Latin was not only the language of power, but also of literature and scholarship. The gold, uh, Masih dengan the Golden Pre-Rome, Statu Caesarea, Virgil and Horace. The period between 75 BC and 14 AD is known as the Classical Latin era. This was a language standardized and refined by orators like Cicero and poets like Virgil. Di The Golden Pre-Rome Table atau ilustrasi membandingkan Latin klasik atau resmi formal dengan Latin vulgar atau lisan sehari-hari. However, it's important to understand that there are two Latin languages. The first is Classical Latin, which is written, formal, and timeless. The second is Vulgar Latin, or Psalmoplebeius, the everyday spoken language brought by soldiers, traders, and colonists to the new provinces. Ini merupakan peta kekaisaran Romawi pada puncak kejayaannya. It was Vulgar Latin that became the seat of change, because it wasn't bound by strict grammatical rules. It evolved differently in each region, absorbing influences from existing local languages, such as Gaulish in France or Iberian in Spain. In short, Classical Latin is the Latin of books. Vulgar Latin is the Latin of the streets, and it is on the streets that true evolution takes place. And so, from the echoes of Proto-Indo-European, a small dialect, called Latin rose to become the language of an empire and only to fragment into the dozens of spoken dialects. Vulgar Latin that eventually became the modern Romance language: Spanish, French, Italian, Portuguese, and Romanian. Thank you and thanks for attention. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.